Secretary, I just, and I appreciate you don't wear ties and suit jackets to Senate estimates, and I think the Deputy Chair has canvassed that earlier. But I just want to reference an issue that I raised with the Public Service Commissioner at last estimates around the impartiality of the public service, particularly in light of the Voice referendum and needing to be inclusive, respectful, no matter what side of that debate you sit on. Are you confident that you have abided by the public service standards with that impartiality?
Yes.
Is it correct that you wore a Black Power T-shirt whilst making a formal address to departmental staff recently?
I don't even know what a Black Power T-shirt is, no.
No?
No. I wore a T-shirt which had an Aboriginal emblem on it, but it made no reference to the referendum or the Voice.
So the emblem, would that be the Aboriginal flag?
Yes, the Aboriginal flag was depicted on that.
And
yes.
there was no words around that?
Correct.
Not on the front or the back?
Correct.
No. Okay.
Happy to take any other questions about T-shirts you might have.
Well, we all owned our own Che Guevara back in the 80s, right? We all went to probably very similar universities.
I didn't.
But no, I'm sure you didn't.
Senator.
Yeah.
Just to be clear, Mr. Betts, so the shirt it just had the flag. It didn't have a fist or any other.
It had a fist, which is
had
a
fist.
symbol of solidarity.
Yeah, right.
Not of
Which that's commonly associated with the Black Power movement. Right?
So the Black Power movement, as I understand it, was a radical movement among African Americans in the late 1960s, which is no longer a relevant consideration and certainly not a piece of terminology that I'm familiar with in contemporary Australia. So to the extent
it sounds like you're pretty familiar with it, but more
familiar
familiar than I.
Well, I have studied recent history, which is something I'd recommend. But to the extent that that symbolised anything, it symbolised solidarity with the Aboriginal community in Australia and with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander staff members within my own department.
Well,
but to suggest that referred in any way to the Voice or any other specific
neither
policy.
are we saying that. That hasn't been put here at all, Mr. Betts. You seem very defensive about this. I mean, the issue here is, Mr. Betts, we weren't obviously at this meeting, but this information's come through to us. Some people in your department are deeply uncomfortable with this presentation. So the issue here is your leadership and the ability to make sure that you keep a team together, some of whom may have very different political opinions. And I'm also a little bit more suspicious because that was a little misleading, I felt, that answer to Senator Mackenzie. You say it was just an Aboriginal flag. Well, now we know it wasn't just an Aboriginal flag. It's a political logo used in politics. And obviously some people in your department are deeply uncomfortable about your presentation.
If I go into any major corporate office in Australia, the Aboriginal flag is hanging there.
It wasn't just the flag. That's the issue, Mr. Betts.
Well,
you tried to make it out it was, and that was not correct.
So what am I being accused of?
What the situation here, Mr. Betts, is obviously there's people in your department who aren't supporting your leadership, right? And this stuff coming back to us. You're meant to present as a Secretary of the Commonwealth Government, meant to be a non-partisan leader of the public service. And this sort of behaviour, I don't think, is exemplary to those standards of the Australian public service.
So are you suggesting that I've contravened the Code of Conduct, in which case I would strongly recommend that you make appropriate representations to the Australian
Well, I'm
Public
not
Service
sure what
Commission.
happened here, Mr. Betts, and I'm not sure we have a full answer from you either. Okay, because you've been a little shifty to the questioning this morning, and now you're backtracking on it. So let's just wait and see.
Hang on. Order. As much as I encourage people to ask their questions and we respectfully wait for each other to give the answers, I think the choice of your wording there, Senator Canavan, you might want to reflect on a little bit.
No, I don't.
You don't want to reflect on accusing Mr. Betts of being shifty?
A little bit shifty? No, I don't.
I think that's very sad. If I just say, I'll come back to you, Senator Canavan. For those who are listening, this is certainly not the view of the committee as a whole. We are on public display here, and I'm hoping we could try and get through today being respectful for each other. All right, Senator Canavan, you're not going to withdraw. I've asked you to withdraw. I haven't, but I'm going to ask you to withdraw the statement that you used, or the wording accusing Mr Betts of being, first, a little bit shifty in your words.
Well, just on the point,
I'd
I'll
like
just
you to
make a point of
reflect.
order. I'll just make a point of order on this. It was a reference to the answer being a little bit shifty, Senator Sterle, Chair. It wasn't a question of the character or anything. I think that's completely appropriate discussion point about answers in this forum.
What we'll do, Senator Campbell, we can go through Hansard to see what
Okay,
it was.
yeah, happy for you to
I
have a
just
look
would rather get on, because I don't want to descend into chaos, at least before morning smoko. So, Senator Canavan, you have the call.
Oh, no,
Thank you. Just continuing on from that, Mr Betts, when you did answer the question to me, you said it simply had an Aboriginal symbol. I questioned, was that the Aboriginal flag? You didn't. You said yes. You didn't offer. Were there any other symbols on your T-shirt other than the Aboriginal flag?
Yes. So there's a clenched fist symbol, and within that is the Aboriginal flag depicted.
Okay.
Clenched fist symbol, as I've attempted to explain, is not uniquely property of the Black Power movement from the late 1960s in the US. I can't believe I didn't prep for this over the weekend. I apologise. It has a variety of different meanings. In this case, it symbolises my signal of solidarity to Aboriginal staff within my department and more broadly in community. That is not about any particular position on the Voice or the referendum. If you feel that it is, you should, as I've said, report it as a breach of the Code of Conduct, and it'll be investigated accordingly. And in terms of the opinions of staff in my department, they're entirely entitled to their own political opinions. But I'm sure that there are many Aboriginal staff within the department who have traditionally felt excluded and would welcome the fact that their secretary is symbolising that things which matter to them also matter to the head of the department.
Mr Betts, do you, and I absolutely agree that the public service should be inclusive of a broad range of perspectives, but that also includes conservative perspectives with the particular question that Australians are going to be asked around the Voice. People within your department obviously felt strongly enough about their views not being respected by the way they interpreted the symbol on your T-shirt. Would you accept that in your efforts to symbolise solidarity for one cohort, that may have been misinterpreted by others within your staff as you not being inclusive of their perspectives?
Your question was, do I accept that it may have been misinterpreted? Well, I'd have to, on the basis that you've received the feedback that you have, that it may have been misinterpreted. But I've received no feedback directly along those lines myself, notwithstanding the fact that Slido was in operation, so people would have been able to ask any questions or provided any feedback that they wanted to in real time anonymously, but no such feedback was provided at the time.
Do you concede then that one of the hallmarks of our APS is political neutrality, but that was a political statement that you made through those wearing that T-shirt?
It was not a party political statement, and I would say, having worked 34 years in the public service in 4 different jurisdictions, 2/3 of that time for governments on the Conservative side of politics, including being appointed secretary by and head of the public service in New South Wales by the Conservative side of politics, that there are many people outside of the Australian Labor Party, for instance, or the Greens, who also are passionate advocates for justice for Aboriginal people. So I don't believe that it's a party political point.
I didn't ask if it was a
that.
party political point at all. I said, was it a political point?
Well, I think the understanding of political impartiality within the public service relates principally to party political impartiality, given that the role of the public service is inevitably at a point of interface with the political environment. If I describe government policy to you, then in a way I'm engaging with politics. So being apolitical does not mean that you're entirely separated from the political process. It means that you're observing the traditions and standards of party political impartiality, which is the obligation on me, which I think I've fulfilled.
And you referenced you have served both the Kennett government and the New South Wales
Yes, I served under Premier Kennett in Victoria for 2 years, Premier O'Farrell, who appointed me to be CEO of Infrastructure New South Wales, Premier Baird, Premier Berejiklian, who appointed me to be Secretary of the Department of Planning, Industry and Environment, and about half an hour for Premier Perrottet.
Yeah, so, I mean, I'm not... I know that you're very au fait with the need to be party political neutral, but it is around politics more generally, and it was that you have described yourself previously as a proud communist with an anarchist.
I actually haven't.
Streak.
I actually haven't, and this was covered off last time, and I don't know whether I'm appalled or not, but I will say it again. I am not and have never been a member of the Communist Party, Senator.
No, I appreciate... See, I think this is where we're getting caught up, Mr Betts.
Well, you said that I described myself as a
communist. I appreciate you're not a
communist.
political party. You understand political parties. I'm talking about politics and philosophy more generally. And, you know, we all love the Clash and the Jam. Like, I was on that train. But when you are now leading a department where you are displaying political statements, and you yourself accept their political statements.
I'm wearing a rainbow lanyard today. Do you object to that?
Not at all. You can wear whatever you like, Mr Betts, but
Thank you.
Question to
Thank
you...
you, Senator.
My question to you is to accept the fact that you are making political statements and that your staff, it doesn't have to be party political, we're talking about a political statement that makes some staff feel uncomfortable and your department not politically neutral.
So, Senator, let me draw that analogy with wearing a rainbow lanyard. Now, everybody knows that that's a symbol of solidarity with the LGBTIQA+ community in this country, and there may be people who hold conservative, religious or other views who object to my expressing solidarity with that community. I'm not disrespecting their religious faith by doing it, but I'm attempting to signal inclusivity and solidarity within my department to a broad span of the Australian community. If I were being disrespectful to people of religious faith, that would be a different matter. But I'm not. Nor am I being disrespectful to the Conservative side of politics by indicating my support for justice for Aboriginal Australians.
Great answer.
The problem here, look, I'll leave it here, but the problem here, Mr Betts, is when you were first asked, you mentioned it was just a flag. Then when I had to question about the fist and you were the fist, I mean...
You knew.
Yeah, a clenched fist is a common logo of communist, as you mentioned, also the Black Power movement in the 1960s. I think this is very different from a rainbow flag. I'm happy to leave it there, but I'm just a little disappointed you just didn't volunteer the information. To me, the fact you didn't volunteer the information indicated you actually wanted to hide it. You didn't think you thought it might be controversial.
Senator, the whole of my speech is on the department's website. It is not something which is susceptible to being hidden. I apologise if I didn't provide all of the information in a single coherent, ordered sentence, but I don't think it would be fair to say that I've misled the committee in any way. And as I've said, if you have any residual concerns about my conduct wearing a T-shirt, then please feel free to report it to the Australian Public Service Commissioner, who I'm sure will be glad to consider it.
Can we move to another subject, or are we got any further questions in corporate matters?
Yep, I've got some.
Oh,
I've
sure.
got some.
Okay.